This episode is presented by Bakken Backers. After years of blocked permits and stifling regulations from Joe Biden, President Trump is unlocking America's energy potential.
We have more liquid gold under our feet than any nation on earth.
With executive orders for drilling and pipeline investments, just as he did in 2017 for the Dakota Access Pipeline.
And now I fully authorize the most talented team ever assembled to go and get it.
This is the moment to secure North Dakota's future, to stop radical outsiders who threaten our state's energy industries, and to grow our energy production, communities, and economy.
It's called Drill, Baby, Drill.
Support the Bakken and learn more at backthebakken.org.
Hey, North Dakota, Rob Port here.
And I'm Chad Oban. We're back for another live recording of Plain Talk on Wednesday, April 23rd at Peacock Alley in beautiful downtown Bismarck.
We'll be interviewing special guests, reacting to the latest headlines, and answering questions from the audience.
Admission is free, so plan to arrive early, grab a great spot. We'll kick things off around 5:30.
That's Wednesday, April 23rd at Peacock Alley in Bismarck, starting at 5:30 p.m.
We'll see you there.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk. I want to say at the outset, if you watch any video from this episode at all, I'm not wearing a Houston Astros shirt. I am wearing a Houston Trash Tros shirt.
Cheaters.
The cheaters, right. I don't want anybody thinking that I am wearing a Houston shirt at all, because that's not happening.
So, Rob, I appreciate you saying that, because literally all I can see is Houston, and I was like, yeah. Well, it's got to be some sort of trash talk.
Well, I was looking at myself for the thing. It says, well, all it says is Houston with the blue and the orange, and I'm thinking I don't want people to think I bought a Houston Astros shirt at a garage sale or something, and I'm wearing it. That's not what's happening here.
Hey, Rob, I also saw a comment on Facebook recently that nobody should take an adult in a backwards baseball hat seriously. And I personally took offense to that. They were going after you, but I've been known to wear a backwards Dodgers hat, and that frustrates me.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of how I dress when I'm working around the house. Like, I don't know. I put my hat on and that's how it is. I get, people come up with all sorts of reasons to dismiss things they don't like hearing. And it's probably,
yeah, that's true.
That's one of the sillier ones. Joining us on this episode is Bob Harms, who, among his many roles in North Dakota politics, served for a while as chairman of the North Dakota Republican Party. I think did you serve as vice chairman? I think you've been treasurer. You've done a lot.
Yeah, I was treasurer and then chairman. Not never served as vice chair.
Never served as, okay. Well, I got that part wrong.
Anyway, we're good.
The reason I wanted Bob on is here's a practical political reality in North Dakota right now, and it's not going to be this way forever. Politics are cyclical, even in North Dakota. It's been a long time that it's been this way, but maybe one day it won't be. But right now, in this moment, if you're a Republican on the ballot in most places in North Dakota, you're going to win.
Yeah.
That R behind your name, it is a powerful, powerful brand. And I would argue for some good reasons. We've had a lot of pretty good Republican leaders who have done a lot of things that voters like. And so they associate that brand with that leadership. And so how a person comes to get that partisan affiliation, there is a specific process for that. And it's a little convoluted. On one hand, the Republican Party, much like the Democratic Party and the Libertarian Party, they have local conventions. And at these conventions, they elect local district leaders. And then those local district leaders eventually provide over a convention at which candidates are endorsed. At the local level, we're talking about legislative candidates. And then at the statewide level, we're, of course, talking about all our statewide candidates. But increasingly, that process is getting a little out of hand, to the point where, and this may surprise you, there are district level committees that are essentially telling the North Dakota Republican Party, you don't have any control over us. And what they're pointing to is a part of state law, which was passed, I think during the 2013 session.
Right.
Bob?
Yep,
Yeah,
that's right.
2013 session. It was amendment created by Representative Jim Casper. And what it does is essentially tells in state law that the state party can't tell local districts what to do, which seems weird, right? Because the local districts are component parts of the state party. So how can a local district give the middle finger to the state party? Apparently the law says they can. And why should this matter to you? Because I'll admit this is a little bit of down in the weeds politics, and it's Republican politics. But again, our state is governed almost uniformly by Republicans, and how we pick who is a Republican candidate and who isn't is central to this process. So, Bob, I wanted to have you on to talk a little bit about that. You've been looking for a way to get an amendment to get that part of law that I just referenced out. How's that process going for you, first of all?
Well, we're still hopeful. You know, the legislature has another couple of weeks left to get its work done and adjourn. So we're still working on that. There's a team, myself, John Tranum, the chairman of the Rules Committee, our former governor, Ed Schaefer, chairwoman, Sandy Sanford. All of us are trying to find a vehicle to repeal the provision in law that you just referenced. And so we're on that pretty much every day. We don't have a vehicle as of yet. There's a couple of ways to do it. But I think we've made a case that has support in both chambers, that the chambers understand what's going on in the districts. The conflict between the districts and the state party is unhealthy, and that what's going on is we have some gamesmanship at the district level, where the districts are basically telling, as you said, the state party that they are autonomous and they can do their own thing, and they don't have to answer to the state committee or the state Republican Party. And I think the conversations we've had with both chambers, I think, is getting some traction. The legislators, I think, understand that that's an issue that should be fixed, because if it continues to go in that direction, what we're going to have is essentially 47 legislative districts that do their own thing and that are answerable to no one other than the members at the local level. And a lot of times, the people that are in power are run the district in a way in which they preserve their own power base, and that's anti-American. I mean, it's inappropriate. It's contrary to the foundation of our country, essentially. I mean, what our system is designed to do and expect is that the public, the members of the public, should be allowed to freely participate and engage in the political process. And if you have gamesmanship happening at the local level in the districts, that process gets stifled. People in power retain power, and they decide who the candidates are. And as a result, then we get legislators that aren't, frankly, as open or subject to a vigorous political discussion, debate, competition that produces a better candidate.
Bob, as you know, you're one of my favorite conservatives because you're a real conservative. You actually live by your conservative principles, even when we disagree. But if I'm on the other side of this conversation, if I'm the folks the insurgents, the far right that have sort of taken over some of these districts, I'm looking at you and Ed Schaefer and others that said, oh, sure, now that you're not in control of these districts, you don't like us doing these things. Can you push back a little bit on that, sort of the idea that the traditional Republicans, the real conservatives, in my opinion, have lost some control, and those folks are now saying, well, they just don't like that they're not in charge anymore.
Yeah, I think that cuts both ways. This activity that I'm talking about, the gamesmanship at the district level, and the districts telling the state party, you can't tell us what to do, has been going on for a decade. I mean, that was going on when I was chairman 10 years ago. And you could have a district organization, whether they were right of center or left of center, those that are in power are playing games to retain power and choose their candidates that they want, whether they're right of center or left of center. And so it's not a matter of, oh, Ed Schaefer and Harms. It's a matter of broader principles that the state party should have rules that all of the districts have a say in forming, and then all of the districts agree that they adhere to, rather than the legislature crafting a state law that says, no, the state party can't tell the districts what to do. So it's not a right or a left issue of far right faction, left of center faction. It's really the principles under which both the Democrat and the Republican parties operates. And frankly, there's a Supreme Court. There's a number of Supreme Court cases, but one in particular, Wisconsin versus La Follette, basically where the U.S. Supreme Court says the state parties are autonomous, and the legislature really doesn't have much business telling them how to manage their affairs. And I've counseled the executive committee, if we don't get this change in law that we're working on this session, the state party should give some thought to saying we're going to challenge the legitimacy of that particular section of law and take it up to the North Dakota Supreme Court and have them make the decision if we can't get it done in the legislature. But we're hopeful that we'll get it done in the legislature this session.
It's really an odd situation, because while the local districts are saying the state party can't tell us what to do, the way the state party is constructed is they're essentially governed by the people elected in those local districts. So the local districts can control. I mean, if they have enough, it's called the state committee, and it's made up of all the district chairs elected from around the state. So essentially, they could game the process, elect their district chairs, and then control the state party. And I want to give some examples of what exactly has been going on here, because Bob, you ran into this. You ran for the state senate in District 2 last cycle. One of the things you tried to do, which is understandable, is you tried to get a copy of your district's bylaws so that you could understand what you needed to do to qualify to be a candidate and receive your local convention endorsement. And you couldn't get a copy of the rules. In District 3, during the 2022 cycle, this was here in Minot, District 3 had a rule which said that you couldn't participate in their convention unless you had paid local party dues in the previous year to District 3. But that means that if you had just moved into District 3, or you were just getting involved in Republican politics for the first time, or remember, that was one of the first elections after redistricting. So if you've just been drawn in to District 3 and your home wasn't even in District 3 previously, you weren't allowed to participate. And that protected Representative Lori Van Winkle and Representative Jeff Hoverson from a challenge. In District 38 in Minot, City Councilwoman Lisa Olson paid her party dues and was intending to be a candidate, and she was a candidate to run for the legislature, but she wasn't allowed to even seek her local party's endorsement because they returned her membership dues and said, we don't consider you a Republican because of some social media posts that she made. So those are the sort of shenanigans that are going on. And, to Chad's point about people saying, well, it's just the people in power now that want to change the rules, I would argue, I don't care what faction you're a part of. That's wrong. That's wrong. If you're going to sit down and play a game of Monopoly, we should all be able to read the rules. And that's one of the problems right now, Bob, is every legislative district has their own set of bylaws.
Yeah.
And they play games with the bylaws, where the bylaws change, or we're not gonna publish the bylaws. We're not gonna let people know where meetings are. And I mean, that's actually one of the rules maybe you could speak to. One of the rules the state party has right now is they're required to post notice of meetings 10 days before, so that people know that the meetings are going to happen, and they can plan, and they can attend and participate. And there are local districts that don't want to do that. That's one of the bones of tension right now. I don't see how that's defensible.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the example you cite is one of the things that have been that have brought this thing to the forefront in this legislative session, where that rule is part of the articles of the rules of the North Dakota Republican Party. Do just what you said, requires 10 days advance notice of any meeting. And we have district chairmen that have not complied with that and basically say we're not following it because state law tells us that you, the state party, don't have the ability to tell us, the districts, how to do our business. And that's the kind of example that's going on out there. That what we want. You and I have talked about this before. Let's say we want every district to have a uniform set of bylaws. You and I have talked about it. We play softball around the state. The rules should be the same. Whether it's in Watford City or Wilton or Wahpeton, all of the rules, and we play softball or volleyball, you name it, should be the same. Same should be applicable when it comes to something so important as how do we run our political processes. But the state law says if the state party were to make uniform bylaws throughout the state for every district to operate under, state law says, no, you can't do that. And so that's the key thing that I think gives that's created this unrest, this discord that exists within the political process right now.
I want to drill down on that, why that's important for the average member of the public. If you've ever thought, hey, I want to get involved in my local political party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, and I don't think Democrats are, maybe Chad can speak to this. I don't think Democrats are struggling with this right now. This seems to be a struggle in the Republican Party. But
well, Democrats want anybody to show up at their stuff. They're not trying to exclude people from the process. Come on. You win elections through addition, not through subtraction. And eventually Republicans are going to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Republicans have the luxury of a lot of inertia behind them right now, but they can destroy that inertia. But I mean, again, I want it for the average listener who's wondering, why should I care about this, like in weeds party stuff? Well, if you've ever thought about running for the legislature, this is what you're going to be up against. Depending on what district you live in, then you may say, well, I think I'm a Republican because of the things I believe, and I'd like to put my name in to see if I can get the endorsement. And you may get locked out. They may say you're not even allowed to know the rules of the process for what you have to do. And that is just, it is fundamentally unfair. And I guess that's my next question for you, Bob, is eventually this is going to cost Republicans, right? I mean, if you alienate enough people by doing this stuff, they're just going to find somewhere else to go. They're going to decide the Republican Party's not for them.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that is unfolding as we speak. I mean, you can go on social media, go into statewide newspapers, and read letters to the editor. I mean, we have former elected officials, statewide elected officials, long-time, lifelong Republicans saying, I'm done. I've had it. I'm not going to any more conventions, whether it's at the state level or the endorsing convention. I've had friends tell me, Harms, there is no way I'm going to engage with the Republican Party any longer because of all the nonsense that's going on. And my response to them is, wait a minute, this is the time where you need to double down. You need to engage. You need to make sure that we have rules that everybody can play by, everybody understands, and we have a vigorous process that produces good legislative candidates. I mean, you can look at the paper in the last 90 days, in the last 3 months, and look at some of the bills that have been introduced by legislators, and you just kind of shake your head, go like, really? That person got elected? And it's because of the process that we're talking about. And that one law that we're talking about trying to get changed is really the source where you can play these games at the local level, and the state party basically is told you can't do anything about it. When I was chairman, we had one district that refused to comply with their own bylaws, refused to comply with North Dakota state party bylaws, refused to comply with North Dakota law. I was chairman, and I said, I'm going to undo everything that you've done that's contrary to your bylaws, our bylaws, and state law. And when it got right down to it, we didn't have the courage in the state party to challenge them. And that went unchallenged. And that's the kind of stuff that's been going on for a decade in North Dakota. And it soils our political process. It discourages people from participating, because of the gamesmanship and the toxicity that exists within the political arena right now.
Bob, I've always sort of thought it was weird that state law dictated how private organizations work in the state. Like, I don't know why state law should set rules for the Democrat or Republican Party on what they do. I understand ballot access and those kind of things, but I mean, are you of the opinion that the state legislature should just get out of this stuff, let the state Republican Party, they're a private organization. Why should state laws dictate how they decide to run their organization?
No, I agree with you 100%. In fact, when I was treasurer, our chairman, Stan Stein, myself, former chairman, Curly Hauglin, all three of us went to the legislature, introduced a bill to do just that. And the Republican legislators refused to support the bill. We couldn't get it passed. And frankly, Jim Casper was one that didn't want us to. I remember being scolded by him at the time, being trying to get that thing passed. But I agree with you, Chad, because it's a private organization. Just imagine what the American Legion Club would think about if the North Dakota legislature dictated to them how they were going to manage their political or their internal affairs, or the 4-H club or VFW. Just take your pick. Any private organization. What does the North Dakota legislature have in managing or dictating their internal affairs?
And I think you end up with some of these internal spats then showing up in the legislature. I remember one, I can't remember if the bill was earlier this session, but the factions of the Republican Party were going back and forth. And finally, Representative Zach Ista stood up and said, I'm starting to think this bill isn't about me. Because it literally was like a Republican convention going on the floor of the House, right? And to me, that's not the business of the legislature. That's the business of a Republican Party. And I think the government should get out of it.
No, I agree. And those kinds of conversations should be taking at Democrat Party headquarters and Republican Party headquarters, not in the legislature. And, I think I would guess 90% of North Dakota citizens would look and say, yeah, if we could give the legislature more time to deal with more important public policy issues and not get sidetracked on things that really are political as opposed to policy, I think most North Dakotans would say, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
And like Chad said, we have some stuff about ballot access where a political party can get ballot access. And then every once in a while, you hear about the libertarians circulating a petition to regain ballot access. And then these political parties don't, because you have to run candidates. And I'm forgetting for what it's like, governor and secretary of state or something. You have to run candidates for those offices, and those candidates have to get a certain number of votes. And then you maintain ballot access, which obviously the Republicans and Democrats typically don't have a problem doing. And then what that ballot access means is essentially the candidates who are endorsed at the convention, they get to go automatically on the ballot and they don't have to petition. One of the bills that Chad was talking about that was debated earlier this session was from Representative Mike Nathy, and it would have removed that ballot access. Essentially, it would have said every candidate, has to petition to appear on the June primary, and the June primary, determines who the party's nominees. I'm okay with some of that, but if you read down on the statute, I mean, it's really dictating down to a granular level, how the districts are going to hold their local conventions and all this stuff. And I think that could be solved at the political party. And then all the political party eventually has to do is tell the state, this is our nominee, put them on the ballot. And if the Republicans want to choose their candidates based on who can stand on their head the longest, then, I think that'd be a dumb way of doing it, but, c'est la vie.
So, Rob, that's a good point, and your listeners might appreciate this. So, in order to get on the general election ballot in North Dakota, there are two ways. You can go through the endorsing process at the district level. You can get on the ballot that way, or you can petition to the public. And that's what happened to me. I was prevented from seeking the endorsement at the district level, so I had to run around for a month and get 200 signatures or so to get on the primary ballots. And then who wins in the primary then goes on to the general election. That's the process. And so what's happening at the local level is And think about this. If you get that endorsement, then you have access to the party's checkbook, you have access to the party's email lists, you have access to the party's political infrastructure, the party members, the executive committee, all of that, all of those resources then go to your benefit in terms of competing in the primary. So that's a big deal. And the gamesmanship that takes place influences the outcome of the primary, and whoever wins in the primary, it's pretty much going to be assured in most cases in North Dakota to be the Republican, to be the candidate, the victorious candidate in the general election.
Well, gamesmanship in politics is a story about as old as politics. It's always been this way, and we're never going to 100% get it out. But I mean, right now, and I just think about for Republicans who are fighting. I mean, one of the things that they're fighting is the idea that they're a good old boys club, that there's ethics problems. And listen, we've had a lot of headlines that suggest there are some deep-seated ethics. There are a lot of Republicans who have gotten far too comfortable in office.
Yeah.
And seem to be shielded from accountability. Now, some of that is the fault of the voters who just automatically vote for Republicans and maybe ought to be thinking more about voting for the individual, the candidate, instead of the party affiliation. But some of it is, I mean, I don't know how, when you tell people, well, if you show up and you want to be a candidate in this district, you're not allowed to know what the rules are. Or if the district executive committee doesn't like you, they can just decide you're not a Republican anymore and you're not allowed to participate. That lends itself to the idea that this is some Tammany Hall baloney that's I almost use a different word, some Tammany Hall type baloney that's going on. And I think it tarnishes that Republican brand. And you continue to tarnish it, eventually that Republican brand's not going to be worth what it once was on the ballot.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%, Rob. I think that's essentially why we're trying to get this thing fixed in this legislative session. And I mean, everybody, we like to think that we believe in the concepts of free speech and freedom to associate and competition and the freedom of ideas and the best candidate wins and all. We profess to believe in those kinds of things, and when we embrace them, those principles produce a better result. They produce better candidates. They produce better public policy. That's good for the public interest as a whole. But when it comes down to executing and implementing those kinds of ideals, we come up short oftentimes. And the thing that we're talking about this morning is exactly a demonstration of why we have to do better in terms of all of those things that I just mentioned. And the political process that we're trying to improve produces public policy that influences our lives, our businesses, our families. And that's really why it's so important that we get this thing fixed.
Bob, I'm going to take a little bit of liberty as the co-host of this and shift gears because I want your take on something. You and I worked shoulder to shoulder twice, defeating measures that would have eliminated property taxes. The legislature is obviously working on a bunch of different bills. What's sort of your take about this property tax conversation that's going on at the legislature, what it means for potentially another ballot initiative? Are they doing enough? I'm just curious on what you're thinking.
Well, I think the legislature and the governor are going to get maybe a B- or a C+. It might be enough to keep them out of a ballot measure, maybe. But if I were to give some guidance, I'd say, the price tag is probably bigger than it needs to be. I get concerned about capping legacy fund earnings forever based upon this property tax reform that we're talking about. That's one concern. I don't think anybody that owns a home in North Dakota expects to pay zero property taxes. I think that's bad policy. I think Senator Hogue was right on the mark of trying to make sure that everybody has skin in the game. So, and then the other thing, you and I might disagree about this a little bit, but I think the cap, the 3% cap, with some ability to change the cap at the local level, I think is a good idea. I think that will be helpful. I do think that if Robert Harms is a county commissioner in Williams County And if he wants a budget bigger than 3%, if he has some ability to raise that cap, and he explains to the voters and is accountable to the voters, fine. I think that cap with some sort of a mechanism to allow local voters or local elected officials to move beyond that cap, I think that's a good idea. I am concerned, last thing, I am concerned that we're leaving out a big part of our state, and that is the farmers and the commercial property owners. I'm concerned. I have friends that own apartment buildings, own gas stations, and they're kind of going, what about us? I mean, do you know how much I pay in property taxes on my 18-plex or my 36-plex or my gas station? And I think we're leaving them out, and I think that's a problem.
Bob, last question. I don't know. I heard you say that Senator Hogue was right on the mark. I think Senator Hogue's actions may be the reason we get another ballot measure, and I think we're getting another ballot measure regardless of what happens. I think there's people who I think the question is how much political momentum is going to be behind that measure. Yeah. If it's good, effective relief that has some sticker shock when people get their property tax bills again and they feel like, okay, finally, we've done something, then I think it's going to take all the wind out of the sails. I'm worried some of the things you just said with Senator Hogue, we're going to cap the amount of property tax relief people could get, I think is a stupid idea. And this idea that we're going to spread it around and listen, I'm sympathetic to the ag landowners and the landlords and everything, but as a practical political matter, if we spread the relief out too much, it's not going to be enough, and we're going to get another ballot measure, and I don't think we're going to like what's in the ballot measure. That's what I'm afraid of. I think Senator Hogue set us back big time.
And Rob, what about Senator Hogue's suggestions? Do you not like the fact that he's moving the primary tax credit up or down to lower it?
I don't like that the credit. I don't like that the credit amount came down from. I would have left it at $1,550, but it's down to $1,250 now. I don't like that we're capping it at no more than 75% of a property tax bill. I'm fine with eventually, putting us on a trajectory where a lot of people don't get it. I mean, we're talking about a dollar amount, even at $1,250. If that 75% cap is in place, depending on your property tax value, people may get their statements and not get anything close to $1,250. And as a practical political matter, how are they going to feel about that? They're going to be ticked off. And ticked off voters is what's going to get us another ballot measure. So I don't like that, and I don't like the intent language that we're gonna go out and you say you're hesitant about using legacy fund dollars. I tend to agree with the governor. I don't mind using legacy fund dollars for North Dakotans, which the primary residence tax credit does. If your primary residence is in North Dakota, you're a North Dakota. Yeah. A lot of those landowners you're talking about don't live in North Dakota. A lot of people still properties and stuff. So we're going to use legacy fund dollars to give tax relief to people who don't live in North Dakota. I don't like any three of those things.
Yeah, I understand. That's a good conversation. I'm in part sympathetic. The legacy fund thing probably is the one that I'm probably most concerned about. That legacy fund is designed to do something very different, and it's not designed to pay property taxes long term. It's designed to take care of 50% of our revenue comes out of the oil industry, and not too distant future, our oil revenues are going to start to decline. Some say, oh, we have all these other formations we're going to tap. I'm very skeptical about that. And one day, and I've done some calculations, if you go out using the Legislative Council's projections on legacy fund earnings, we continue to build the general fund and the legacy fund. We spend the legacy fund earnings. Legacy fund is going to be short by about half of what we'll need in about 10 years. We're building ourselves a financial house of cards that 10 years from now, we're going to go, oh my goodness, what have we done?
Well, we'll end the on that bright, happy note. We'll end the interview. Bob, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Good to see you guys. Yeah, always a pleasure. Take care.
This episode is presented by Bakken Backers. After years of blocked permits and stifling regulations from Joe Biden, President Trump is unlocking America's energy potential.
We have more liquid gold under our feet than any nation on earth.
With executive orders for drilling and pipeline investments. just as he did in 2017 for the Dakota Access Pipeline.
And now I fully authorize the most talented team ever assembled to go and get it.
This is the moment to secure North Dakota's future, to stop radical outsiders who threaten our state's energy industries, and to grow our energy production, communities, and economy.
It's called Drill, Baby, Drill.
Support the Bakken and learn more at backthebakken.org.
North Dakotans for Public Schools is dedicated to protecting and strengthening public education in North Dakota. United by the belief that public schools are the cornerstone of our communities, North Dakotans for Public Schools fights against harmful policies like voucher schemes that divert resources away from public schools. By bringing together educators, parents, school boards, and citizens, North Dakotans for Public Schools amplifies the voices of those who understand the critical role public schools play in shaping the future of North Dakota's children and communities. Learn more and get involved at ndforpublicschools.com.
Welcome back. Just finished up with Bob Harms, which I was hurt, Chad, that you said Bob was your favorite conservative and not your co-host, Rob.
Did I say favorite or one of?
I'd have to go back and look at the transcript.
I meant one of.
Okay, fair enough. I'm kidding.
That is funny. I didn't think about that. I was trying to compliment Bob, and I forget how sensitive you can be.
Yeah, that's right. I'm kidding. So interesting little segue. First of all, what's going on internally in the Republican Party is gross. This idea that people aren't allowed to know what the rules are, and we're gonna play. I mean, it's baloney. And people say, well, it's not just the mega far right that's doing it. The establishment did it in the past. Yeah, maybe. Still wrong. I don't care who's doing it. If we're we're gonna have a process, and we're gonna call it an open process and everything else. People have to be able to know what the rules are. People have to be able to.
In his point about if you go and play softball in Fargo, if you go and play softball in Williston, you should play by the same rules.
Right.
I feel the same way about private schools, just so you know, that if we're going to give money to private schools and public schools, we should play by the same rules. That's a topic for another day, Rob.
Torturing a metaphor. All right. Nice, interesting little segue into property taxes. I mean, we could have gone a lot longer just talking about that. He likes what Senator Hogue is doing. My frustration level with Senator Hogue, who I like, but I mean, my frustration level with him is pretty high right now because I feel like he threw a bomb into this debate, and now I think what we're going to end up with is something a lot worse than what we could have.
Yeah, the legislature is going to legislate, right? I mean, that at the end of the day, they're going to want their fingerprints all over this thing. I thought, the skin in the game conversation, that continues to be a very interesting one to me because I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I want some people to have skin in the game. But I think the lower income folks that are in a $100,000 house or $80,000 house, I think we need to get them to 100 because they're not paying that much and they're not going to see the benefit. So there's going to be this overweighted benefit to people in higher priced homes if you're at 75% across the board. I'd like to see maybe it's the lowest 50% of folks can get to 100 and then it's 75 for everybody else. And maybe you get there anyway by the phasing in that was in Kelly's original plan that, you help people with the smallest houses or the least valued houses to start, and then you grow to the rest. But I understand skin in the game, but I agree with you. Those folks that aren't going to get the full benefit this first go around are not going to be happy, and it's bad politics.
It is bad politics, and I hate to say that because the point is good policy,
right? Not
good politics. But in this situation, if we don't do good politics, we're going to get bad policy.
Yeah, and I will tell you in terms of like a measure 4, if I do tend to agree with you that they're going to bring something back again to eliminate property taxes, and will it have?
I think Rick Becker needs to be involved in another election cycle. I just think there's no getting around the ego.
But as somebody who is heavily involved in that Measure 4 campaign, I will tell you right now, if this comes back again, that coalition ain't coming back in the same form. I mean, I will tell you from my perspective, the organization I work for spent a lot of time and treasure to defeat that thing. And there's a lot of money being spent at the state level that that we're not really thrilled with the way it's being spent, right? And so I think there's going to be a lot of tired groups who are going to look at this legislature and say, we appreciate the effort, but it's up to you to defeat this thing now. So I think it'll be a different campaign.
Defeat it by implementing policy that makes people feel satisfied, or at least enough people where a Measure 4 doesn't have a chance. I mean, again, there's a group of people that just aren't going to be satisfied as long as property taxes exist. I don't know what to do with them. They're gonna exist. It's the people who don't have an ideological objection to the concept of property taxes, but are outraged, not unjustifiably, by their bills. Those people have got to feel real relief, and they have to feel it immediately, or we're going to get another measure and it's going to pass.
And so I talked to a state senator the other day about the Hogue amendments, and he brought up something that I thought is probably accurate, is the vast majority of North Dakotans aren't paying attention to this give and take on the property tax bill and $14.50 versus $12.50. And so the thought sort of is, even if it's at $12.50, people are still going to be like, yep, that's a significant amount of relief. They're not going to be thinking, shoot, it should have been $14.50. And I think that's probably true. I think we think that people are paying attention more than they are, and maybe $12.50 is enough. $14.50 would be better. $15.50 would be better than that, right? But I think that's a significant amount of money off of a lot of people's property taxes. So I think it'll remain to be seen. But again, I think your point about the Hogue amendments, the problem with the Hogue amendments weren't necessarily that all the policy was terrible. It's that they just sort of threw the process and what seemed to be on a good path into a little bit of chaos.
Well, it remains to be seen what we get. And Kelly Armstrong's been racking up a pretty good success level about bringing some things back. He got his cell phone bill back and got it passed by a wide margin.
Yeah, he only flipped like 28 votes.
Yeah. So, if the governor maybe can work some magic, when I've talked to him briefly about it, he still sounds pretty confident. Although maybe he's not going to express his anxieties to a reporter, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I just, maybe $12.50 is enough. You're right. Do you want to roll the dice though? We could have.
I don't.
We could have afforded $15.50. Frankly, I think the citizens of North Dakotans can afford $15.50. It has to be real. It has to be impactful. And I worry the more we water it down, the more we're putting ourselves at risk of bad policy.
I also worry about the fiscal reality of the state. I mean, we don't know what's going to be happening in terms of federal dollars flowing here. Oil prices are down. Tariffs are going to affect us negatively. I mean, so the longer this goes into the session, I think there's going to be a lot of reasons why, hey, we can't afford that. We can't afford this program or that program or this tax cut. Because if I were a state legislator right now, I'd be real nervous about what the fiscal future of North Dakota looks like.
Although, again, we're talking about legacy fund earnings, which are pretty relatively immune to some of the stuff that's going on.
I don't know. Have you looked at the stock market to look at what those earnings might be?
No, I've been looking at my 401k and thinking, I'm just never going to retire. It's
I've been
tough.
trying to buy the dip, Rob, but I can't find the dip. I can't find the bottom.
Yeah. Hey, even me invested in tobacco and booze and guns, and finding myself not as recession proof as I thought.
Yeah.
That strategy has worked in the past. It's proving less successful right now. So they have,
I gotta stop you there. Our portfolios look very different.
Yeah, I'm sure. Ruthless capitalist over here. I don't drink or smoke. I do have a lot of guns, but I'm here to make money and to take care of my family.
Investing in electric vehicle infrastructure, not a great move right now.
Not great right now.
No.
Yeah, I always kind of thought Tesla, even back when Tesla was a liberal darling, and I think I got you're just a conservative and you don't like electric vehicles. Tesla's had some weird ink on its books for a while when you consider how much of their revenues comes from other auto manufacturers basically buying carbon credits from them, which is just a government created market. It's not really predicated on demand. And also I think Tesla was reaching a saturation point the people who electric vehicles make sense for were buying electric vehicles, but there's a point at which that market's saturated without some pretty big advancements.
And now we know the company's run by a crazy billionaire.
And now you add in the political vectors on this, and I think some of the bubble on Tesla is popping. Plus, the Cybertruck was a flipping disaster. Have you been watching?
Ugly.
Well, it's ugly and it's dumb looking to begin with, but also, I mean, it's literally glued together. If you want to be entertained, go watch the videos of people putting the Cybertruck through its paces. It's pathetic. All right. Oh
man, did we just get off topic?
What did we do? Let's bring it back. I was reading an article about some of the federal funding. There was one, it was FEMA dollars, and it was going to infrastructure projects. And I'm reading along, like Fessenden, for instance, got a little less than $2 million for a wastewater lagoon project. And it got cut. And so now the city of Fessenden, I mean, they were getting ready to start taking bids on the project next month. So now they're back to the drawing board. I'm sure the reason they're building the project is because they have a need to handle their wastewater. So I don't know what their situation is, but it's not good. But I was reading through, I just wrote a column about this, but I was reading through FEMA's, which is under the Department of Homeland Security, which is under former Governor Kristi Noem. And I was reading through, and their department spokesperson said essentially that they cut these programs because they were wasteful and they were political. And I'm thinking to myself, how is a wastewater project in Fessenden, North Dakota, political? Like, that is the least political thing. That is one of the things that government does that we just expect government to do, right? Is I flush the toilet, the wastewater goes somewhere. We all assume it's being dealt with, appropriately. There's boards that hold meetings that nobody attends, and they're just doing this work and they're making sure this stuff happens. It's the least political thing in the world, but it's cut now. The reality for North Dakota is Fessenden has a tiny tax base. And I was reading, one of the local officials was estimating that if they had to pay for that locally, it would be a $6,000 property tax increase for every property owner in Wells County. That is, they're not going to pay for that. And if you zoom out and you think about the amount of federal money in North Dakota's budget, Kelly Armstrong's executive budget, at about 30% of the appropriations in there were just passed through federal dollars. If the state of North Dakota had to replace those monies, we don't have that money. We don't have the tax base to pay for it. And that's not a bad thing. One of the reasons that is North Dakota makes a lot of ag products and energy products that the rest of the nation uses. And so it behooves the rest of the nation to help us with our infrastructure, because not a lot of people live here. We don't have the tax base to support it, but that infrastructure is of national importance because we want grain shipments to be able to get to market on good roads. So, there's a reason why that situation exists, but now the Trump administration is calling a lot of that spending that I think most of us would find not at all controversial. They're calling it political and wasteful. And the real world problems that creates for our state are profound.
Yeah. I think about USDA Rural Development, which is a department, obviously, that my wife used to be in charge of, which is completely nonpartisan. This is an organization that would go out with Republican senators to go to a community to talk about the investment that is being made in these rural communities on things like water treatment plants, on things like long-term care, hospital, all the things that allows a community to stay in place. And what's the political reality is often the people who benefit from those programs, again, it's the federal government investing in these rural communities, are overwhelmingly Trump voters, right? And so when I hear about the Fessenden thing and they're cutting that off, they're saying it's a political thing, but they're hurting their own people. It's hurting their own people. We want to lower property taxes, but then these kind of things get cut off, and $6,000 on a home in Fessenden. And I don't know how you survive as a community without a way to manage your wastewater. And I don't think Fessenden or the state or whatever county, what county's Fessenden in?
Wells
County. They can't afford this stuff. This is the role of the federal government to help in these communities the same way we brought electricity and all these different things to these communities for exactly what you just talked about. We feed the world. And so if these communities start dying because something like a wastewater treatment plant is seen as political, it's going to be really bad for our part of the country.
Well, how do you keep people on the farm if they don't, and making, raising the livestock and raising the crops that we need if they don't have communities like Pheasant around to live in or to come into town to, and there's a grocery store or whatever other amenities they want to avail themselves of. I mean, this is a good way to make sure that rural America dies.
Yeah.
Again, rural America, it's very unique. There's a lot of wide open spaces because, hey, a lot of it's fields where we're growing the crops and raising the animals. And that doesn't lend itself to having a big tax base. It's something that we struggle with when we talk about the property tax thing. We were just talking about it, sort of the conundrum that is taxing jurisdictions that have a ton of agriculture land. It's hard. It's a very unique situation. So, I mean, just the way they're going about this. I in my column, I went back and had the clip from Representative Fedorchak that was on, and you had asked her a question about Doge, and I went back and listened to it, and she went back and forth where she was like, "Oh, I'd love to talk about Doge, but also I'm not going to defend Doge, but also I think there's a lot of good things that are come out of it." I think somebody like Julie Fedorchak, given the political realities around it, they don't know what to do with this situation. Because on one hand, the way Doge is going about things is demonstrably bad and hurtful, and they shouldn't be doing it. Even if we agree that we need to cut, and I do, they're doing it the wrong way. But on the other hand, politically, she can't say that because she will pay a price for it.
Well, I mean, I think Senator Hoeven basically said the same thing, right? I mean, both of them were talking about fraud, waste, and abuse. They talk about the empty buildings. They have their talking points. But the reality is...
But they're not necessarily wrong either.
No, again, they're not necessarily wrong. And I don't think anybody, either of them or you and I, doesn't believe there's some places where maybe we can cut. But let's do it smart. You don't cut first and figure out the ramification of the cuts afterwards. That's a terrible way. You wouldn't do that at your house. You wouldn't do that at your business. And you would, and again, I understand the political sort of reality that they're in, but it's also really good politics to stand up for Pheasant and to stand up for your home state and say this is not right. And for Hoeven told us that, Doge isn't making these cuts. It's the individual cabinet members that are making the cuts. Well, there's clearly pressure from Doge to make these cuts. And if Kristi Noem is making the determination that Pheasant doesn't need clean water, then Fedorchak and Hoeven and Kramer need to talk to her and say that this money is really, really important to the state.
And it wasn't
their job.
I mean, it was like a water inlet project. I mean, it was $20 million. And that's just a drop in the bucket of what North Dakota receives. I mean, there's these sorts of projects that get federal funding, and it's complicated. But I mean, flood control. I mean, that's something we're worried about here in Minot. We're still trying to build flood control, and is our federal money going to come through for that? Nobody seems to have good answers right now.
And we're talking about physical infrastructure, but last week we're talking about other kind of infrastructure in terms of behavioral health, sexual assault, domestic assault. That infrastructure also makes our communities places that folks want to live in and can live in.
We expect that the government provides, or somebody provides, these services, but they're going to go away. And I think that all plays in. You had texted me before the show. I had a column up saying that Republicans should not underestimate these hands-off protests. And I wrote it from the perspective of somebody who, well over a decade ago was involved in the Tea Party protests in North Dakota, which was kind of the beginning of a big shift in North Dakota politics, where we saw, a Democratic congressional delegation that had been in office for decades lose. I mean, they went away. And I think one of the reasons, Democrats, I think nationally, both in North Dakota and nationally, underestimated the importance. They tried to dismiss it. They tried to say it was all Koch brothers organizing it, and it was invalid, and it was AstroTurf, and all sorts of nasty things. I remember Nancy Pelosi saying that we were carrying around swastikas. I mean, it was crazy, the lengths they went to try to dismiss that movement. But that movement had a real impact on politics here in North Dakota, where, again, we have an all-Republican delegation. We used to have an all-Democratic delegation, but also politics nationally. When you look at the losses in Congress and the losses in governorships and the losses in state legislatures around the country under Barack Obama, they turned their backs on that. And I think the thing that will sort of pierce the miasma around MAGA, or also the thing, and I wouldn't describe this as a miasma, but the other thing that might reverse the fortunes of Republicans in North Dakota is if people start feeling real world pain, like real world pain. And I think some of this stuff, like a wastewater treatment plant in Pheasant, creates real world pain for people who live in Pheasant. And
Your
people are like,
401k. Your 401k is real world pain. If you're planning on retiring in a year, your 401k is a really big deal right now.
yeah,
But I will tell. I thought your column was spot on. You and I had very different seats back in 2009 in terms of the interpretation of what was going on. You were helping organizing them. I was on the other side of the thing, probably poo-pooing them, saying, "Look, this is just a small group. You know, it's a minority group who's causing all this stuff." But it was a real thing, and I will tell you, I'm seeing the same thing with these hands-off rallies. In a couple of perspectives, I wasn't there. And it was 2 blocks from my house, and I wasn't there because I'm not really a big like go to protest guy, although I did do the readout thing. But I did talk to like some folks that are part of organizations that were at the thing, and their frustration was, man, there's so many people, and like we couldn't organize them, like we couldn't get them to sign a petition, we couldn't get the sign this because it was so organic. There was no plan. There was just thousands of people who were really, really angry. And I think that's what we saw with the Tea Party, right? I mean, I think you said in your column, once the professional organizers started to get involved, that's when it sort of lost some of its juice. And I think, again, people like me are like, oh my God, we should be getting all the contact information from these people so we can engage them in legislative action and district conventions and whatever. That's not where people are at right now. People are pissed, and they want to stand on a street corner and let everybody know that they're mad.
and there's nothing wrong with, because at some point standing on the street corner, it can be cathartic, but it doesn't accomplish anything in the real world. There's nothing wrong with trying to channel some of that. And the Tea Party did. I mean, the Tea Party did ultimately channel people into showing up at district convention, electing different people, and some blame that Tea Party movement for the position. I mean, was sort of the roots of MAGA. You've blamed me for that. I could tell you that that's not what it was when it started.
Listen, I don't think blame you. I was trying to get you to do some self-reflection on your role on these things.
Yeah, I could tell you that a lot of what's happening now are not the things that I stood for. But but that's the other thing is people come to these rallies for a lot of different reasons. And something Bob said, Bob, a lifelong Republican who's been about as involved in Republican politics in North Dakota as you can be.
He was in those Tea Parties. He was talking at them.
I've sat in meetings organizing them with Bob Harms. I wish he was on. We could talk about him and reminisce a little bit because we had a lot of fun. But he's talking about lifelong Republicans now who are like, this is enough, and they're mad, and who knows what's going to happen. It's such a chaotic situation. But I could tell you, when people start getting hit in the pocketbook, is when they're gonna turn around. And
Robin, I would just add one last thing. If you have 1,000 to 1,500 people in Bismarck, North Dakota, coming out and talking about how they're fed up with what's going on with this president and what's going on with the federal delegation and the Republicans, that represents a lot more than just 1,000 or 1,500 people, right? That's not so this is legit. I mean, people are really angry. They're getting off of their couches. And it reminds me of 2009, 2010, when there was all of a sudden just people had enough, and we're seeing that again.
I do have some advice too for Democrats or progressive activists that are sort of looking at this and thinking this is a good thing. Don't try to convert these people to be Democrats or progressives. Just because a lot of them aren't. A lot of them that are showing up are not progressives, and they're never going to
meet them where they're at.
But just meet them where they're at. I think that's the mistake. If Democrats or progressives squander, whether it's in North Dakota or nationally, if they squander this, that's going to be the mistake that they made. Is you just have to accept that they're going to be on your side for a while, and the reasons are their own, and just accept the help and move forward. Don't try to convert them, or don't get into ideological litmus tests, because that hurt the Tea Party a lot, where it's like everybody has to be here for the same reason that I'm here. A lot of those games were being played in the background, and it hurt the movement. And that would be a mistake that they could avoid.
I will tell you one thing that I do struggle with a little bit, and this has been my whole life as a left of center activist, is the amount of focus on national politics rather than state politics, and trying to get people to sort of pivot from the anger they're feeling at Trump to look at the state capitol and see some of the stuff that's going there, and knowing that they can probably control more that's happening at the state convention or at the state capitol than they can federally. But again, that's not what's motivating them to get out. But I don't know how to connect those things.
And that's why one of the reasons why I thought having Bob Harms was on so important, because one of the things you could tell these people to do is, well, show up at your local political, whether you're Republican or Democrat, show up at your local political party convention, get involved, and select better candidates. But a lot of districts in North Dakota,
Lock them out.
you might get locked out, and you might not be allowed to show up, which sucks and is terrible. All right, Tony from Grand Forks left us a voicemail, and I think we're going to listen to that right now.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name's Tony. I live in Grand Forks. I normally comment on Spotify, but this might be a little longer message. I just finished your episode with John Hoven, where he was talking, where you guys talked about tariffs and executive overreach. I don't know if you guys remember when USMCA first came in, how Trump was playing that. It's like it was a really incredible trade deal and it was more free trade. Obviously, free trade's a good thing. So it's really weird that now they're talking about how USMCA, and even Hoven mentioned it, is not, a great trade deal, and we need to do some better with Canada and Mexico, despite 6 years ago, Trump did USMCA. So I was really surprised to hear that and talking about how these tariffs are going to be a really good thing. And then I was really disappointed in his Biden whataboutisms when you guys asked about executive overreach. I thought you guys made a great point that argument just doesn't stand up, because if you say, oh, well, what about the last guy? That's not great justification to keep doing something unconstitutional. So appreciate the show, and I you guys always have great episodes, and I love listening. So you have a great weekend. Thanks.
Yeah, Tony, I think, brought up something. We talked about it a little bit. I wish we had brought up with Senator Hoven the USMCA thing, because we're complaining about a trade deal with Canada. Trump is complaining about a trade deal with Canada that we created. Like he created. He negotiated that trade deal, and now he doesn't like it anymore. And I mean, I guess, and listen, I'm not against politicians saying I made some mistakes and we need to revisit something. It's understandable. I don't expect anybody to be perfect, but I would like some ownership of it, like take some accountability of it. And that's just something Donald Trump is allergic to.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, people can change their mind, but you have to admit you're changing your mind, not just sort of ignoring the fact that you're changing your mind and blaming everything on Biden. And the whataboutism, I mean, that's just the biggest frustration ever, right? I mean, when currently it's a lot of Republicans pointing to, look what Biden did. But I mean, other people on the left will say, well, look at Trump is doing, so therefore it justifies me being the way I am. That's frustrating. And I agree with Tony. It's just not a quality way to make your point, to say the other guy did something terrible, so therefore we get to do something terrible. It's bad government.
What terrifies me is Democrats getting into power and justifying a lot of awful things by saying, well, Trump did it.
Listen, Rob, we talked about that we were concerned that the Dems might do a January 6th type thing if Biden lost, and they didn't.
Well, they didn't. No, and I'm glad they didn't. But that's the risk, is political parties escalate, one over the other, and that worries me. I would like to think that Democrats wouldn't, arrest or revoke the visas of foreign students on campuses because they made Facebook posts that had a political message they don't like. I would like to think that a Democratic president wouldn't be talking about sending American citizens to be jailed in El Salvador. But, I mean, that's the escalation. And that's why principles are important, because if you don't live up to your own principles, then why should you expect the opposition to live up to them?
Yep.
All right. By the way, if you ever want to leave us a voicemail, you can call this number or you can text it. Either way. 701-587-3141. Tony left a voicemail. That's great. You can also send text. You can also follow us on social media, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, X, @PlainTalkND. Don't forget, we have another live show coming up at the Peacock Alley. That's Wednesday, April 23rd, starting at 5:30 p.m. Peacock Alley is located in downtown Bismarck. It's a beautiful place that you ought to be visiting anyway, because it's a great...
Rob, have we announced our guest yet?
We have not. Kelly Armstrong is going to be our guest. And also Chuck Suki is going to be on. Now, Chuck Suki was just Dancing Dakota, which is one of his songs, was just named North Dakota State Waltz. And I think he was named our state troubadour. Was that the term?
I think that's true. Yeah.
So Chuck Suki is a treasure. and North Dakota. If you haven't listened to his, I've listened to it for a long time. My grandmother and I shared music is kind of it was a thing that she got me into like outlaw country and things like that. She loved Chuck Suki. Saturday Night at the Hall, Summer Hands, just beautiful. His album Dakota Wins is fantastic. It's a staple. It's on Spotify. I listen to it all the time. I think it's just wonderful. I'm very excited to talk to him. We're not going to talk about
Rob's going to be a little starstruck, I think, at the live
a little
show.
Bit. I have a great anecdote where Chuck Suki showed up we had booked him for a family reunion where he was going to come and play, and he ended up being late. And it was everybody was kind of sitting around in the church hall waiting for him to show up. And I was entertaining the crowd doing John Wayne impersonations, which I don't know why I was like 9-10 years old doing John Wayne.
I was gonna say, was this like 2 years ago or
No, and I'm not gonna repeat them. I wasn't good at them then. I haven't improved over the years. But I remember him coming in because Chuck, he was a working farmer. He came in, he had mud on his boots. I still remember he got mud on the floor, and he came rushing in and he was all sweaty and he felt so bad that he was late. And then he sat up there, and I just remember watching this sweaty, muddy guy play this beautiful music on the guitar. And it was, I don't know, it's a very happy memory from my childhood. And it was really touching, and I really connected with his music in that moment. So I'm looking forward to him being on. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. And Kelly will be the second most famous person at Peacock Alley that night. Yeah, if people have thoughts for the governor, I mean, we're going to be 2 weeks from now, probably a week from the end of the session. Come out and have some beers, eat some chicken wings, and I'm sure Kelly will stick around and talk to folks even when he's off the air. He's very accessible.
I will say that this part of the legislative session for me and like my style of reporting is very, very hard to cover, because I'm very much like kind of making arguments about broad policy ideas and philosophies. I'm not really like the minute by minute incremental guy. And that's what this part is, right? It's
Hate it.
Minute by minute incremental. And it gets hard for me to cover. It's like I've made the arguments, right? Like I've written everything I can. Now it's just sitting around waiting for what the ultimate outcomes are going to be.
And I agree with that. I get frustrated. I may either something is good or bad. Let's vote it up or down. Right. I mean, let's not tinker. Let's not, because I think sometimes when we tinker too much, you end up with a worse policy. And I also think this is when legislators and lobbyists are bored. And so they start getting engaged in stuff. I was up at the Capitol yesterday and on Monday, and I had somebody pull me into a conversation that sort of maybe connected to my work. But that's the way sort of folks are at this point. If they don't have enough going on, they're just trying to bring people into all kinds of conversations. I got enough to think about.
I get pitched on a lot of stories about intrigue and things going on. I mean, some of them are good. Some of them are like, you guys need to touch some grass. Like you guys get out of the hothouse a little bit, because
there's also the silliness of you're sitting at the Capitol and people are like looking across the cafeteria, who's talking to who and what are they talking about? Are they working on an amendment on that? And they might just be having a cup of coffee and talking about their kid's soccer game.
Yeah, it's the crazy season now, and we've got a few weeks of it left. I am looking forward to this legislative session being over, and us getting some good property tax relief. I hope we do, but
I think we will still.
Okay. We're gonna put a pin in it there. Thank you so much for listening as always, and we'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening. hurt, Chad, that you said Bob was your favorite conservative and not your co-host, Rob.
Did I say favorite or one of? Bob, as you know, you're one of my favorite conservatives.
Okay, fair enough.